plots were foiled last year. Well, now a new documentary by former MP broadcaster, writer and RT host George Galloway takes a closer look at the rise of far-right groups.
The far right in Britain isn't just on the march. It's taking violent, murderous action.
They are raping, pimping and abusing our youth.
I see these organisations which are usually splintered, which reform, which take different names.
How do you view Hitler? Enmeshed in the complex web of British fascism.
And you'll be able to watch the documentary this evening and tomorrow to coincide with today's International Day of Elimination of Racism. I'm now joined by the man himself here in the studio, George Galloway. George, why did you make this documentary?
Well, anyone who thought that British fascism died with Mosley and the Black Shirts, the British Union of Fascism, got a very rude awakening with the murder of the young woman Labour MP Jo Cox, stabbed, murdered in plain sight, in broad daylight, by a fascist. And since then, the police have been, as you just said, bursting attempts by far-right groups to commit other horrendous, violent terrorist actions. And the new head of counter-terrorism in Britain just yesterday made the point that the threat from ISIS, Al-Qaeda type organizations is second, of course, only with the attempts of far-right groups to commit these kind of actions. And they've infiltrated even the British Armed Forces, allegedly.
Can you blame the rise of something like ISIL that's actually fomented this rise in right-wing extremism in this country?
Well, I think there are two sides of the same coin. I think that the more horrific the atrocities carried out by these so-called Islamist groups, the more they bring forth an equal and opposite reaction from British fascists who exploit the genuine horror of the population about the kind of things that they have seen on their television and online about crucifixions and heart-eating and head-chopping and all the rest. But these British fascists are just as dangerous to the British public as the Islamist fanatics that we see every day on the news. Unfortunately, we don't see enough about the danger of fascism. Not just in Britain, by the way, but in the United States, where it's also on the rise significantly, and also in other parts of Europe. It's a clear and present danger.
How did you go about making this? Who did you talk to? Was it easy to get access?
The most discomforting part was interviewing the former strongman of the National Front, the 1970s and early 80s, incarnation of British fascism. Their guru, Martin Webster, sat and told me, the father of 4 mixed-race children, that mixed-race people would have to leave their own country, go back home, wherever home is, home that they've never actually seen. And when I told them that I was the father of 4 mixed-race children, it was a picture, and you'll see it coming up after this news bulletin.
What do you think, though, this will achieve, this documentary?
Well, I hope it will accentuate the point that Neil Basu, the head of counter-terrorism, made earlier this week, that British far-right fascism, terrorism, is a real and present danger. It's second to ISIS and Al-Qaeda types, but it's a growing and closing second, and people need to pay real attention to it, and not to be fooled by the vanilla end of this fascist spectrum, purporting to be against Islamic extremism, Football Lads Alliance, the EDL, and so on. But we're not fascists, Gov. That's the thing that we have to be alert to.
George, thank you very much indeed for joining us here in the studio. Well, you can watch George Galloway's documentary, The Patriot Game, after the break right here on RTUK, and I'll be back with more news for you at 8.